Pleased to see so many people out here. I was flying in from Denver to Austin today thinking, why am I going to Austin to talk about earthquakes? There really aren't very many earthquakes in Austin. So going to Miami to talk about physics or something. But the reality is, I think everyone's interested in earthquakes. I've been interested for about 20 years, and I'd like to talk tonight about some of the things I've learned over those years. In particular, there's two systems that I've been responsible for developing over the last 5 years that I think have really revolutionized what we've done in the post-earthquake minutes and hours to provide rapid information. And this is moving well beyond what we've been doing for decades, which is providing an epicenter and a magnitude. We've been doing that for a long time. Now we're working on maps that show the distribution of shaking and potential damage between minutes of an earthquake. What's interesting about that is that there's really a man versus machine story behind this whole thing. One of the systems depends entirely on internet users coming in after an earthquake, filling out a questionnaire saying what they experienced during that earthquake. From specific questions, we can get a gauge of what the intensity was at their location. We can make a map very quickly and automatically. On the other hand, we don't expect, after a devastating earthquake, for the internet and for internet users to be accessing these web pages. So we have to have a robust system that's going to work for emergency response. And that system is called ShakeMap. And that's the machines. The machines are the seismic network of seismic instruments throughout the region where we want to make these shake maps, which provides this information automatically independent of the human input. So I'm going to explain these two systems tonight. Before I get going, I'd like to thank both the Seismological Society of America and also IRIS, which is the Incorporated Research Institution for Seismology. And these two groups have sponsored this distinguished lecture series. And by the way, it's a series, but this is the first of the series, so your audience and your sort of guinea pigs at the same time. But also I want to thank ESI, Environmental Science Institute here, for a very organized and very warm welcome here, and I really appreciate that. So the brief outlines I'm going to talk about just some basic background of earthquake science in order to talk about the two main issues. The systems I'm talking about, ShakeMap and DigiField. Again, ShakeMap's the machines, it's the automated system that's entirely dependent on the seismic instrumentation that we have. DigiField is the system that's based on public response to the internet. So first, the seismic hazards in the United States. This is a map showing in red the areas that have the highest risk, the highest hazard actually, and in areas of white, areas that have particularly low hazards. And so you can see that the west coast of the United States is particularly high hazard, as do the mountain states and a number of other states where we've had earthquakes in the past. Of course, here in Austin, we're in the area of white, so it's unlikely that we'll have a significant earthquake in this area, but there will be small earthquakes. In fact, how many people in the audience have felt an earthquake at all? Okay, I'd say about half the people. How many people have felt an earthquake in Texas? Okay, so that pretty much agrees with what we see on the long-term map. And in fact, there are active areas in parts of Texas, but 39 of the U.S. states have had earthquakes that have had damaging effects. And in fact, worldwide, we know that earthquakes are even more devastating. Just in 2003 alone, there were over 45,000 deaths around the world from earthquakes. So it's a serious issue, and a lot of the states have faced pretty great consequences when larger earthquakes occur. Now, what I do as part of USGS in Golden, where the National Earthquake Information Center is, we have a responsibility for, as a federal agency, for monitoring not only global but also national earthquakes. We're supposed to report these as quickly as possible for post-earthquake information and emergency response. We also have a responsibility for distributing this information for planning purposes, for public awareness. Finally, data collection. It serves a number of purposes, and one of them is for mitigating the effects of earthquakes by knowing and having good details about where earthquakes are likely to happen. For instance, the map I just showed you took a lot of development and knowledge of earthquake information to make that hazard map. To do this, we run a series of seismic networks. One of them is the Advanced National Seismic Cell system, which is developing right now. And under that system, we have a number of regional and urban networks that are usually placed at universities, and they run more localized, concentrated networks. We also jointly run the Global Seismic Network with the IRIS that I mentioned earlier. So now, first of all, magnitude and intensity. This is something we have to clear up before we go any further. On the left, I have Charlie Richter looking at a seismogram, trying to determine magnitude. On the right, intensity as described by what happened to an actual building in a particular location. The difference between these two is pretty important to recognize. The magnitude represents the size of the earthquake, but not necessarily the shaking level of the earthquake. Intensity, on the other hand, represents the shaking at a particular location, and obviously that shaking and damage can vary from place to place. Magnitude is determined by the area of the fault and how much it slipped. So if you think about it, to have a larger earthquake, you need a larger fault. It turns out to go from magnitude 5 to magnitude 6, you need about 10 times the size of fault to do that. So you need a large fault to have a large earthquake. That'll come back to us. And intensity is determined from the observations of shaking and damage, not from the size of the earthquake. So it's particular observations of particular locations. Magnitude is always given a decimal value, for instance 6.7. And if there's only one value for an earthquake, you can know different magnitude measurements can differ slightly. An earthquake is only one size. However, Roman numerals are used for intensity, and they range from 1 to 10 typically. And of course, these vary from location to location for given earthquakes. And then, usually people describe the magnitude by the Richter scale, but typically now energy magnitude is used. And in the United States, the modified Kelvin intensity scale is the traditional scale that we've been using. A little bit more background is for an earthquake that happens on a fault area, there's always an initiation point, which is called the hypocenter. And below, that's on the fault plane, above which we have a point on the earth which we call the epicenter. Now, this is a small fault. The epicenter may actually represent the area that shook the hardest in this particular case. As you get to a larger magnitude, you need a larger fault. For instance, we expand the size of the fault, maybe that's a 0.1 unit in terms of magnitude larger. The epicenter may not represent the area that shook the hardest. It may shake the hardest over the fault in this area. You can imagine if you had a much larger fault, hundreds of miles long, which is quite possible, then the epicenter won't represent necessarily where the strong shaking is. That's something we're trying to determine as quickly as possible. So what controls the level of shaking? Well, obviously the magnitude does. The bigger the fault, the bigger the earthquake, the larger the area that's going to experience the fault. And also, larger faults tend to have larger slips, so the shaking severity is greater. However, distance from the fault is critical. If you're near the fault, you're going to have strong motions typically than you are further and further away from the fault. So that's a very important factor. It's a very deep earthquake, it might not even be felt at the surface. Side effects, very soft soils are known to amplify this type of shaking. So even if you're far away on very soft material, you can have amplified shaking that results in damage. Focusing underground complexities and can act as lenses and focusing and defocusing energy, bigger parts of the earth, and therefore you can have very concentrated areas of very strong shaking and very strong damage. And directivity is something that we talk about in the seismology community a lot. If a rupture happens along a fault, in one direction, it tends to focus energy in that direction, and that's more or less a Doppler effect. But the bottom line is, if you were to have a rupture go the other direction, the shaking severity could actually be greater on the other end of the fault. So where the rupture started would actually dictate what the ultimate shaking is like. My point is that all these factors are things that you really can't determine ahead of time. They're very complicated and they're unique from earthquake to earthquake. So the best we can do is to map out the shaking immediately after it occurs and provide that information to emergency responders. Now, a good example of this type of these effects and how they show up in a real earthquake. This is a map of the local Korea earthquake. This was commonly referred to as the World Series earthquake. It happened during a World Series game going on at Camp Pacific Park. And it was magnitude 6.9. The fault for this earthquake was buried beneath the earth and was about 25 miles long, as shown by this rectangle. Now, we would expect that the shaking above that area would be very strong. In fact, there was quite a bit of damage above that fault line. But there was also quite a bit of damage in a number of other places that were very isolated from the fault, including Oakland, the Marina District in San Francisco, and also Santa Cruz. There was all these complicated effects that I just mentioned contributing to these isolated pockets of shaking. So the bottom line is knowing the magnitude and knowing the epicenter is not enough information to determine what actually happened. So the whole subplot of this talk is really moving beyond magnitude and epicenter. And I'll show you an example of that. For that same earthquake, the epicenter for the magnitude 6.91 crater earthquake was right here. If you turn on the television after the earthquake, you typically get something like this. They'll show concentric circles emanating from the point on the Earth, and that's their depiction of the shaking. Now, within a few minutes of an earthquake, in California in particular, we can make a map that shows the distribution of shaking in great detail. So this is a map of the intensity of shaking on the relative scale here, with red and yellow being areas that are likely to experience damage. We've been educating the media to try to use these maps as best they can to help portray what actually happened in a disaster like this. So in one place like Santa Cruz Mountains, you had collapse of houses, downslope failure. In the Marina District, we had a lot of collapse of weak first-story structures. The Bay Bridge partially collapsed across the bay there, and also a number of roads failed in areas of high intensity. So this is a very good way of having a base map and showing what actually happened. I was in the Northridge earthquake in Pasadena, California, from right here, and that earthquake happened at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you can imagine all of Los Angeles waking up to a very strong shaking, and not have any idea of what's going on. It took us about 30 minutes just to get the magnitude and epicenter. Had we had the system in place that we have now, within a few minutes of the earthquake, we'd be able to show a map of the distribution of shaking and then respond accordingly. So you have to consider, if you had this map in hand a few minutes after the earthquake, how would that change in response to the earthquake? And for a lot of different groups, utilities, emergency responders, all sorts of government agencies that need to respond to the earthquake, it provides a lot of useful information. And as I mentioned, depth was a factor with earthquakes. That same Northridge earthquake shown in the side view is shown here, and the particular rupture for that earthquake was very close to the surface. We had a comparable size earthquake, magnitude 6.8 earthquake in 2001 near Seattle, Washington. It was much deeper, though, down at about 50 kilometers. And you can see that by the time that reached the surface, the shaking was spread out at a lower intensity. So having the same magnitude, location close to an urban center, with very different effects. The losses from the Northridge earthquake were over $40 billion. The losses from the smaller earthquake were several hundred million. So huge difference in the ultimate effects, and it's just the depth of the earthquake in this case. So how do we make a ShakeMap? Well, this is a map of California showing blue dots, all the seismic instruments that can contribute to ShakeMap. They're instruments that stay on scale for large shaking and send the information about the amplitude of shaking at those locations instantly into a central site. Well, some of them actually take a few minutes because they download data through the dial-up system. But these stations contribute to the ShakeMap. This is the location of the recent earthquake we had in San Simeon in December of last year. You can see that it was in a place where we had very few stations. In fact, we purposely concentrated the stations in the main urban areas. This is very different than what we've done in the past, where we put instruments in quiet areas so we could best record small earthquakes. Now we're changing the focus. We're putting instruments where people are so we get a quick assessment of what happened at those particular sites. So if we look at these two rectangles, Los Angeles and San Francisco, you can see the density of stations. There's several hundred stations now in southern and northern California. And we can make a pretty good map by getting the information shaken back from these particular locations. Again, we're focusing on the areas where people really are, where the damage is likely to be greatest. Typical seismic station, hole in the ground. Sometimes we put these inside electrical substations and other major facilities where the particular owner wants to know what the shaking is going to be like as soon as possible after an earthquake. And that way they get buy-in into the network. They provide telemetry and security to the site. Being very quieter, this gives us some thermal insulation. If you look down the hole, there's a seismic sensor, records the motion. There's a recording unit, telemetry, backup batteries, and this is typical seismic package. Now, each of these sensors shown as a triangle on this particular map of the Northridge earthquake then shows us how we make a ShakeMap. We can actually contour the map of, in this case, acceleration of the ground to areas that are shifted harder than others. Here's the epicenter. Again, it's somewhat centered to where the shaking is the strongest, but not perfect. I'll show you that a little better. So these stations all contribute shaking amplitude that tells us what the shaking is like in different places. Now, you can see there's not stations everywhere, and that's true lots of places in the rest of California. So we've developed a system that actually adds some information to this map. We take what we've recorded so far, and with seismological tools, we estimate what the shaking is at little points where there are no stations. This makes for an estimate of shaking in areas where we have no other information. We do this with a little help from our geologic friends, and we take a map of the surface materials of the state of California. We zoom in on an area around Los Angeles. These different geologic units represent everything from soft rock in yellow to hard rock in blue. Soft rock being the area of basins where the shaking is typically the greatest. What we do with this is we have stations spread out throughout the area. When we infer what's going on in between stations, we know what kind of geology we're on, and we'll correct this amplification of shaking in order to get the best inference about what's going on in between the stations. Now, this is very important not only because we have gaps in our seismic network, but also we want to be assured that even in a catastrophic earthquake, if we lose part of the network, that we can predict ground motion where we don't have data coming in. So if we then look at the map that this is now peak velocity from the same earthquake, you can see the contours that don't have any control from particular seismic stations. And this is a contour that's going around the San Fernando Valley. This is the valley right here. And it's doing that because of the geologic corrections we make. So we've added information to the map that we know is relevant to how the earth behaves. And the next step, going from something that's peak velocity that's not particularly friendly to most people, we've converted velocity of the ground and acceleration of the ground to what I derived as instrumental intensity. And what we do is we take these recordings that have come from seismic instruments, convert that to an instrumental intensity that can be color-coded. It's consistent with the modified mechanical intensity scale. And we also describe in simple terms what the perceived shaking is going to be and what the potential damage is going to be. We don't record the damage, we're recording the shaking. But in past earthquakes, we can relate that shaking level to what's happened during those earthquakes that experience similar levels of shaking. So then we can go from the map of velocity or acceleration to a color-coded intensity with an intensity scale. On the web pages, we put the stations on the map, so that gives you an idea of where the map is really well constrained by data. But we also make a TV-friendly map that's a little bit more visible on the TV screen. And so for a heavy intensity, say intensity 9 in the Newhall area, this is one of the things that will happen at that particular site. So there's a catastrophic failure of an interstate overpass right in this location. So this is another good way of mapping out where the worst effects will be. So again, we make this in different flavors. The one that goes on the web has all the complexity to it. This one's made for television. It's got simpler text, larger text. It doesn't have complicated legend on the bottom. It's got the right aspect ratio for television. And we now ship this off immediately to a lot of news stations. So we're making shake maps in a number of places in the country. You can get to the website at earthquake.usgs.gov/ShakeMap. And we're making maps in northern Southern California, we're making maps in Washington, and we're making maps in Salt Lake City area. In the near future, though, we hope to be making maps in a few other areas in Alaska, Anchorage and Fairbanks, most of Puerto Rico, Hawaii, central U.S., and also the northeast part of the U.S. near New York City. All these areas have high risks from not only earthquakes, but losses due to earthquakes because of population. So what are the primary uses of ShakeMap? First and foremost, it's the response to an earthquake. And emergency response really needs to coordinate resources in a major earthquake. You can imagine how much damage it could be from a major 7.5 to 8 magnitude earthquake in Southern California. It's really important to prioritize where to send resources and where resources can be crewed on. It's very important for post-earthquake loss estimation. I'll show you that in a second. response planning. If you look at these maps and try to understand what's happened in the past, it's very good for gauging what you have to do in the future to respond to an earthquake. There's a number of scientific and engineering studies that have been using these maps as well. For loss estimation, ShakeMap provide the shaking of it. They don't provide the damage. So if you take that and you use then an inventory and the vulnerability buildings on top of this map, you can quickly come up with loss estimations. And FEMA and also the Office of Emergency Services in California has some sophisticated software that takes the inventory of all the types of structures and comes up with loss estimation, not only in terms of structures, but also how many people are likely to be injured, casualties, how many people are going to need housing, clothing, very sophisticated system. And it's always relied on as magnitude and epicenter. Now we feed it this map of shaking intensity, and the losses can be much more accurate because the shaking distribution is well constrained. So these loss estimates then guide the federal and state response to a particular earthquake. Emergency response also, Caltrans, California Department of Transportation. This is one of 12 TMC traffic management centers, where they're the nerve centers of very, very large freeway systems in California. At these sites, we're working with them to get the ShakeMap information into their hands as quickly as possible so they can use that for decision making, opening and closing freeways and sending response teams. What they do, actually, in addition to just traffic management, is they take the ShakeMap, they take the bridge inventory, overlay it in a GIS, and quickly put out a list of the shaking at each bridge overpass. And they do it in a hierarchical sense so they know which structures to head to first to respond in terms of inspections and closing structures. Caltrans has 25,000 bridges in California. So if you have a major earthquake, it's very difficult to know where to start with that many structures. So they really want to narrow it down to the most critical ones to start with. So this is very, very beneficial for the California and other utilities that have some performance. The largest earthquake we've had that we made a ShakeMap for was in 1999. It was a Hector Minor earthquake in 1997.1. It was centered out in the Mojave Desert, a very unpopulated area. So most of the population is in Los Angeles and in the corridor here. Everyone was woken. It was a strong shake for most people, but there was not any damage in the populated areas. However, Caltrans did use this particular map to look for structures in the area that had strong shaking. We also use ShakeMap a lot for planning earthquakes and planning scenario earthquakes. These are earthquakes that are likely to happen in the near future from what we know about the faults and their recent activity. So we can look back at the hazard map, which is a map of the likely places that are going to have serious shaking. The red zone through here can be identified as the San Andreas Fault. This black line represents part of the fault that ruptured in 1857. We think that's about the length of the rupture, and it was about a magnitude 7.8 earthquake. Now the question is, if that earthquake were to happen today, how would we respond to it? The way to do that is to use the tools that are built in the ShakeMap that are used to predict ground motion. Come up with a ShakeMap that's actually quite dramatic. We put the word scenario across the map so that people don't confuse it for the real map. We have the word scenario in an incredible number of places on the web pages when you put these online. And you cannot pull these out of the maps, by the way. So these are scenario maps that can be used to understand what would be the response to an earthquake with maps. And you can see that Los Angeles is not near the San Andreas Fault that would be affected, but more directly would be affected cities along the San Andreas that have been growing greatly in recent years. So what do you do with these maps? Well, we ran a scenario ShakeMap for the Los Angeles County Office of Emergency Management. Los Angeles County alone is about 5 million people. They ran an operation as if this earthquake happened. They got activated all of their response systems, and they used this at their LA County Operations Center to drive their response to the scenario earthquake. So here's a group that knows what to do with these maps when they see them, and they know how to respond. So it's a full cycle, and they're therefore ready for when the earthquake hits. It's a great way to plan for an earthquake. Okay, now let's switch to the other side of the coin, the man versus machine. That's the machine, here's the human input. Community Internet intensity maps. That's what I call it when I started this. The general public seemed to like did you feel better? So we've been using that more recently. If you go to Google and just do a search on citizen science, you come up with some pretty interesting things. I thought that some of the most interesting ones, the ones that come to the top, for instance, the Cornell Ornithology Lab, they've got a project called Project Feeder Watch. It's a very nice way of collecting data. People all around the country go in and say what they saw at their bird feeder, and it's collected and ultimately made into maps. This particular map is for you can go to the system, pick a particular region, pick a particular species. And what you do is you get a map of the distribution of birds across North America. This is magpies, something I see in my backyard quite a bit, and indeed there's a lot of magpies in this part of Colorado. So this is a really unique system in that you could not collect this data any other way. You need, in this case, 15,000 people collecting information for it. So it's a really unique system. I think citizen science has a lot of really important aspects. I'm really pleased to say that I think what we've been doing with Did You Feel It with the USGS is probably the most sophisticated use of citizen science to date. We have a system now where anyone who feels an earthquake can get online, pick the region that they felt the earthquake in, and then basically go to the earthquake that they think they felt based on the location, and then you just fill out a simple questionnaire. The questionnaire is shown here as part. You can put in personal information if you want. It's useful to put in across the street address. What's required though is a zip code. That's the basic parameter that we use for a location. If you put your street address in, we can get a better location, but it's not required. And then you start answering questions. Did you feel the earthquake? Did people around you feel the earthquake? Did pictures get knocked askew? Did things fall off the shelves? And so on down to higher levels of shaking. Ultimately, you get down to questions that have to do with damage. Did the chimney crack? Did the chimney fall off? These are very simple questions, but the answers to these questions are very diagnostic of the shaking level. And so we carefully designed this questionnaire to be able to assign intensities automatically to those responses. And it's calibrated from past earthquakes, so we know that the answers come consistent with what we've seen from past earthquakes. And we simply take the responses from each zip code and assign a single intensity to that zip code, color code, to map it. So each time entries come in, we update the map with the zip code that's been filled out. So the map, if you just leave it on your screen, will update every several minutes. So I went in and I just put in a couple answers to the questions. It came up and gave me an intensity 4, my location. It says that my intensity was 4, the intensity, my zip code was 4. If there were other people that had different values, they would average out. And I was the only one in this case for that particular zip code. Then, anytime there's an earthquake anywhere in the country, we get people coming in, and we can produce maps very quickly now of the shaking intensity. Now, this is an earthquake, not a large one, but one that was widely felt. It was in Alabama, Fort Payne, Alabama, magnitude 4.6. And this particular map shows little zip code areas that are filled in with slightly different colors, key into the intensity scale at the bottom. And this map was made of 16,900 responses in over 1,500 zip codes. 17,000 people came in after the earthquake to tell us what they felt. And it actually turns out to be a very accurate portrayal of the shaking from the earthquake. You can even zoom in on a particular location and see that the variations of the intensity are very consistent with what you would expect from this size earthquake. The strongest shaking in the epicentral area was at the beginning of damage. There's some minor damage from this earthquake, but no serious damage. So we can really map out intensities very quickly as well with the system as shown. Our Texas earthquakes, well, we've had the system going for 5 years. I looked around to see what I could find. There were a few earthquakes. One that was felt near Amarillo, that was a magnitude 3.9. Magnitude 3.3 felt near the Texas-Oklahoma border. It was also on our archive of earthquakes. But that was about it. It turns out if you take a chunk out of the hazard map that I showed you in the first place, those two epicenters are in areas that are at slightly higher or elevated hazards compared to, for instance, where we are right now. So that's consistent with what we see in the hazard map. So how do people find these things? Well, we do our best to publicize these things. But typically people go to Google, they go to search engines, they find it. It's amazing how people find this. An earthquake in Alabama is probably in a place where most of those people never filled out this questionnaire before. They found it. It's remarkable that they do. But we do make an effort by putting out in local newspapers. As soon as we can, we'll contact the media there, and they'll put web pages up that say, if you felt this, go to this website. That helps a lot. And in fact, it's really important to get a lot of people to respond, because then you get a better map. And the more people you have per zip code, the more stable the answer is. So the more the better is the case. So for an earthquake in Gilroy, California, magnitude 5.2, over 16,000 responses. Back to that. So we have over 16,000 responses in 300 zip codes for magnitude 5.2 in California. Immediately that image is taken and put into the newspaper the next day, which they just looked at the picture off the web, put it in the newspaper, and made actually a very nice map of what the distribution of shaking was like. This then leads to more people coming in, finding the website, and next time there's an earthquake, they know where to go. So that's a great feedback system for getting more people to respond. Now, to date, in the last 5 years, it's not even been 5 years yet, but 4.5 years, we've had over 440,000 individual responses across the country. And this includes every state in the country. Not necessarily an earthquake in every state, but an earthquake was felt in every state. And you can see that the areas of the hazard map that we saw earlier tend to be the areas where we have a lot of shaking. But earthquakes in New York, Virginia, Alabama, the New Madrid area, got earthquakes just about everywhere. We compare this to the hazard map that I showed you earlier. It's pretty interesting. Some of the areas that have higher hazards certainly show up. New York, up here, Virginia, Madrid, just about everywhere we have earthquakes in places where the hazard map has been elevated in some way. The issue, though, is that this map is an estimate of what would happen at a low probability over the next 50 years. So there's lots of areas that are likely going to experience very strong shaking that haven't shaken yet in the last 5 years. So this gives us an indication that we're on the right track in terms of hazard map, but clearly there's going to be areas that have more earthquakes that we haven't experienced in this short window of time. Just to show you how this has been working for the last several years. In California, most of the earthquakes that have got the most responses are clearly in California, where we have the most earthquakes. People are used to the system, they get online very quickly. But Alabama, Indiana, Virginia have all had a large number of responses to earthquakes, even for very small earthquakes. So it's a combination of the magnitude of the earthquake and really where the earthquake occurred in terms of population, perhaps internet. But this is what we see. Anywhere in the country there's an earthquake, we get a pretty good response. The most responses we got were 621 responses in one particular zip code for the Squally earthquake in Washington. That's the most in one zip code. And if you think about that, that's Microsoft headquarters. So they clearly have internet access. That was when you get about 5 responses, the number doesn't really seem to change very much. 5 is typically pretty robust, and 5, 10, 15, 20, the numbers don't change. So having a few hundred responses in the zip code leads to a very, very safe number. In fact, scientifically this becomes very, very interesting because we can start to map out the intensity distributions for earthquakes that we didn't even try to do this for in the past. It was very difficult in the past. It would be a postal questionnaire that would be sent to every zip code post office. They would fill out a questionnaire, send it back, and individually would have to go through each one of those and assign intensities to that questionnaire. This system is completely automatic. People fill out the questionnaire and that gets updated. And so we do this for small earthquakes, we do this for earthquakes all over the country. And what I'm showing here are circles of equal distance out to 300 kilometers with 4 different earthquakes. They're all comparable magnitude, 4.9, 5.1, 4.6, 4.6. The difference, though, is this one is California. The other 3 are what we call in central eastern U.S. as a very stable continental area, which tends to allow energy to travel further. These are comparable sizes. The California earthquake is felt only out to a little bit past 100 kilometers for an earthquake in Evansville, out to 200, 300 kilometers. Fort Payne, Alabama, out to 400 kilometers. In New York, out to 500 kilometers. This is something we've known for a long time in seismology. The eastern U.S. propagates, the energy transmits much better than it does in the west. A lot of it's got to do with the crust. The structure of the crust is a lot more, it's a lot stronger in the east and allows energy to travel out further. So for the similar size earthquakes, you get a much wider belt area. And that explains in part why so many more people are responding in the east than the west for comparable size earthquakes. We record earthquakes down to magnitude 2, 2.6 in this case. In Manhattan, this is Manhattan Island, we've got a bunch of responses for the magnitude 2.6. We have never touched this in the past with the postal questionnaire, which is too time-consuming and too expensive. So we see this all over the country now, things that we haven't ever seen in the past, and it's very enlightening. But scientifically, I think that the most interesting thing is that we can make these two systems work in the same place in areas where we have ShakeMap. Southern California, this is an earthquake near Beverly Hills, magnitude, I think this was a 3.9 or so. Lightly felt, this is the ShakeMap, this is the DYFI, Immediate Internet Intensity Map. And when we first started this, we made intensities the way they've done it traditionally, which is integer values with Roman numerals. We realized that with this many responses, we could get fairly accurate numbers at the intensities, better than a total value Roman numeral. What we did was we started making these. You can see that in areas like this, the numbers either, if it's 4.5, it's going to be put either 5 or down to 4, and we have better precision than that. So we started using a map that looks more like ShakeMap, which has continuous color palette. When I show you that, you'll see that it looks a lot more like the ShakeMap. These two maps are completely unrelated. This one's based only on seismic instruments. This one's based only on people filling out questions on the internet. So wherever we've done this comparison, it's been very, very favorable and quite remarkable to me. So you can see that there's a gradient across here, much better than the integer values of intensity that we've always done in the past. Scientifically, that's remarkable because what it means, if you go back to this instrumental intensity scale, you go from intensity 4 to 5, 5 to 6, basically the ground motion goes up by 2 times, a factor of 2. We're saying that we can get now not just integer values, but in between integer values. So if you ask a whole bunch of people the same questions, they can tell you, and you can learn the absolute value of shaking at that location better than a factor of 2. I don't think most seismologists can believe that in years past. And it actually becomes quite obvious from these maps. And we can compare other shake maps for other regions. This is the Geological earthquake. This is the DYFI map, which is the ShakeMap. And there's no seismic instruments in the epicenter area here. So in fact, the constraints are probably better from the intensity reports computed online. But in general, the same pattern emerges. You can always go online after and compare the maps for future. The most recent large earthquake we had was the 6.5 San Simeon earthquake. Now this is an area where we have very few seismic instruments. We made a ShakeMap. The intensity map from the community map suffers from the fact that some of the zip codes are really large in that area because it's not very popular. And so that's a bit of a limitation with this particular system, where it's populated, the zip codes are smaller, and you can make a more detailed map. We can take a look at that map, though. That was, again, in this case, about 18,000 responses and 1,000 zip codes. We can watch how these come in time. First, I want to show you one thing. This is the map as it looks an hour after the earthquake. So this time is going to tell us how long after the earthquake occurrence the map is made. This is the map that shows up after an hour. And at this time, there's about, it's probably impossible to believe, but it's about 9,000 responses after an hour. So 3,600 seconds, that's about 3 responses per second coming in for an entire hour. And that continues for quite some time. So I'm going to start this at the time of the earthquake, and I'm going to run. You'll see as the minutes tick off, how this map evolves. Now, it's pretty random to start with. These are responses coming from all over the place. But as the responses come in, it starts to be more coherent and show you really what's going on in terms of the overall picture. Unfortunately, again, the earthquake happened at a very remote spot, so the zip codes in the epicenter have very, very few responses, so they're not as stable as the ones in other areas. Okay, so the largest earthquake that we had, did you feel it running for was the 7.1 Hector mine earthquake. We had over 25,000 responses from this particular earthquake. In Washington, we had magnitude 6.8. It was felt in many states. Again, here's a place where zip codes in a lot of areas are very large. What we can do here is then go to the street addresses when they're provided. About 80% of people put in the street addresses. We can do a thing called geocoding them, which is getting the actual latitude and longitude of that street address. And so we can put little dots on the map. And this is not the location of all the Starbucks in the Seattle area. It's really a map of all locations where individual responses came. So now we can get rid of the zip code and say we can use our own boxes, our own polygons to make a map. And what we get out is much better resolution. We can make very detailed maps of the Seattle area. And when we compare these to what actually happened in terms of damage from this earthquake, in terms of what happened in terms of chimney losses, it actually holds up quite well. So the information that's coming in is useful for a number of different purposes, not only in terms of the shaking distribution, but also the damage. So these two systems now, well, they're very different. They actually complement each other in a lot of ways. One thing is that the combined data set from these two, as I showed you for the Hollywood earthquake, allows us to improve relationships between what we record and what actually happened. We have a seismic instrument, and we know exactly what the shaking was like at that point, but what's the damage at that point? Did the chimney collapse or didn't? Statistically, we can come up with a lot better constraints on that by having these two maps in the same place and over time developing better relationships. Now, did you feel it can provide this information where there are no stations? Okay, and it turns out that's most of the U.S. So there's a lot of areas where we have very few seismic instruments. We can get a lot of good information from the general public in these areas because internet access is pretty much ubiquitous. And these add to points not only for scientific analysis but also sociological analysis. ShakeMap provides a robust and rapid system for getting earthquake response. Did you feel it provides the human elements as well as direct observations? The chimney came down. You can state that in your questionnaire. This human element is a very important aspect of it. At the bottom of our questionnaire, there's an open area where you can type and type and type. First-person account of what you experienced during that earthquake. And to me, that's really the most fascinating part of this exercise. We get first-person accounts that are quite dramatic of what people did and how they experienced an earthquake. I have several people in the sociology field looking at these to understand how people understand risk, how they perceive the threat from earthquakes, and how they respond to disasters. There's a lot of very useful information there. But more important, I think people have a form of catharsis. When they fill out this questionnaire, they're putting in information that they know is going to some scientific benefit. And after an earthquake, people really like to share what they experienced with somebody. They go out on the street, they talk to their neighbors they never talked to before. And this is just another avenue where they can respond and say, this is what I experienced. And we listen. We instantly listen and make that information go to the map. And now, did you feel this used by the USGS to streamline the intensity of assignment procedure? We've done this consistent with what we've done in the past, so we can now assign MMI values based on the system. This saves much manpower, much cost in terms of assigning intensities. We do it for parts of the country and for magnitude smaller than we ever did today. So these two systems really have a lot of complementary aspects to them, though they have very different techniques. And if you ever feel an earthquake, if you're here in Austin or if you're traveling somewhere else, you can come online and contribute to the system. So thank you, and we'll leave it there.
practical application of some everyday technology to a real-world problem. That's great. Questions for David? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was living in Houston in 1992, and we experienced, I guess you could call it an artificial earthquake. There was a huge explosion in Brenham, which is between Austin and Houston, and it created a ground roll. And I guess a day or so afterwards, the newspaper printed I don't know if it was a ShakeMap or an intensity map or some kind of map, but it showed basically that the waves propagated pretty well towards Houston, but almost not at all towards the Austin area, because there's more limestone towards Austin and it's more just clay towards Houston. But do events like that show up in records? Are they monitored at all?
Yeah, I get a page anytime 10 responses come in the same general region within a few minutes. And we have seen all sorts of events that are not sonic. The most typical are sonic booms. When the shuttles come in over Los Angeles, we would see that. Any sonic flight anywhere in the country, pretty much we can see the system. You'll see explosions that are man-made. You'll see induced earthquakes. And you also get a lot of things that aren't earthquakes, that aren't explosions, it's just people's experiences. But they tend to be random. It's the ones that show up in big numbers that we can look for. Sonic booms are very interesting because that's something we can track down very easily now. And if you look at the questionnaires, they're very diagnostic. It's always windows rattled as opposed to ground shaking. So you know what it is right away.
I noticed in your time lapse of the Paso Robles responses that the initial responses were further out, and that there were very few responses for near where the rate of shaking turned out to be. Now, in a large earthquake, I'd imagine that's because communications are disrupted. But do you see that typically in earthquakes?
Not typically, but for that earthquake it's clear. And I probably attribute that to a number of things. One of them, there was some power outage in the epicentral area, probably not enough to affect the map distribution as much as other factors. But in general, for an earthquake like that, when you're out in San Francisco or Los Angeles, it was a shake, it was fun, it was exciting. You get online and you fill out the questionnaire. When you have that central area, it was terrifying. Your first instinct is not to get online and start typing the questionnaire. So that, again, shows why this whole ShakeMap system is really required. That 6.5 is not centered in an urban area. If it was, we would expect to hold the map for a while, and that would be taken care of by ShakeMap. The digital map should get filled in over time and be accurate as people come back online and get their list together.
Seismic activity seems to be long periods of silence or near silence punctuated by great spikes. And I was just wondering how your server farm or whatever it is you use to run this copes with that spikiness. I mean, are you getting a lot of people trying to get on and not making it on and therefore giving up?
Well, luckily there are a lot more smaller earthquakes than larger earthquakes. So we've had experience over the years and this is built up. That San Simeon earthquake where I said there's 3 responses per second for an hour, that was responses. We were getting hundreds of hits per second. And so we've seen this in the past for smaller earthquakes. We've developed the capacity to handle the load. One of the ways we've done it is we've just distributed the load. We have contracted with Akamai actually to distribute servers, 4,000 servers around the country that can take up the load in terms of redistributing. Questionnaires, though, filling out the forms, that's actually a CPU processing job. And so that has a limitation. Fortunately, we haven't reached that limitation. We're always hoping that computers are going faster than internet access is increasing.
Is Earth the only planet that can have an earthquake, or can other planets like Mars or something have an earthquake too?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, an earthquake in Mars, we can have a Marsquake. And with the Apollo mission, we did send up seismologists to the moon, and we could record moonquakes quite a bit. And so any planet that's solid mass, solid rock, you can get some kind of quakes on. The moon had some very interesting quakes, and there was a place that was much harder than New England or the central U.S. in terms of energy. Energy would drive up to the moon, come back and forth and back and forth. This is so hard.
We have a question from the webcast audience. Nish asks, isn't there an inherent delay if humans provide earthquake information?
Yeah, it's with the community internet intensive now, things are going to evolve with time. But it's remarkable how fast and how many people are on a computer, independent of what time of day it is and where it is. And in fact, it's usual that we get what we call unknown responses. These are responses that come in before we've even located the earthquake. So it can take us less than a minute in places like California to several minutes in other parts of the country to locate the earthquake. When as soon as we locate it, we put up a web page specific for that earthquake. In the meantime, entries are coming streaming in from people who just said, I felt something, I don't know where the earthquake is, but this is what I felt. So it's amazing how fast we get the first few responses. If we went back to that movie, you can see within 10 minutes we had 1,000 responses or so. And if you go to the web page for Did You Feel It, you look at any earthquake, and there's a button that says additional maps and data, you can actually see the responses as a function of time and how they came in. And it's quite dramatic how many people get online quickly.
Here's another webcast question. Are there times when the Did You Feel It system has failed to work? And which system do you personally prefer or think is more reliable and accurate? And this is signed Kid from Miss Wagner's fourth period.
That's a tough question for a kid. Well, again, they complement each other. Did You Feel It is not a robust, hardened system. It's based on the community. It's what we get out of our own citizens. It works though in places where we don't have a hardened system, so that's a benefit. But clearly, ShakeMap is the way to go if your interest is emergency response and recovery from an earthquake, and you're in an area that has serious earthquakes. You want ShakeMap because that's what's going to provide you an instantaneous look at what happened, independent of what happens with the internet and community users on the internet.
Approximately what does it cost to install one of your stations, and what's the annual maintenance cost?
Well, the current development that's going on is part of the Advanced National Seismic System. I said we had about 700, 800 total instruments in California. It depends on the instrument. If it's continuously telemetered to a site, it costs more than instruments that sit out and trigger and send information back. But they're expensive, typically $10,000 to $20,000, but that's the cost of the instrument. To maintain the system, to update the system as it evolves, it's really the cost, and that's a personnel issue. And so we've developed a system, and we have ShakeMap running in a few places in the country. We'd like to have a lot more. It's a matter of resources.
Is the Did You Feel It system being used in other countries, like, for example, Japan or China, where you have a lot of people and a lot of earthquakes?
It's coming online in different places I've seen around the world. Most recently in England, that I spoke about today. The nature of the system is very different. A lot of people, it's easy to put a questionnaire online and say, fill out the questionnaire and tell us what you felt. What we developed was a system that takes all those answers, computes a numerical value based on those answers, and automatically responds and makes them into a map. So that I haven't seen anywhere else yet. Although it's just a matter of time because the internet is clearly expanded to all parts of the world. In fact, we don't make maps for outside the U.S., but we do take in responses. And in the last year, we've had earthquakes many places of the globe where we've gotten a lot of responses from earthquakes in Greece, France, Afghanistan, Japan, you name it. The Japanese have a very, very good seismic instrument system. They have at least 10 times as many instruments in Japan as we have in California. Japan and California are about the same size. They're very well instrumented, but I haven't seen anything comparable in terms of this internet response by the community.
Another webcast, somebody was asking, what type of soil will conduct an earthquake better, and is there any type of foundation that can help reduce an earthquake's effects? Not sure I know that.
The generalization is the softer the soil, the stronger the amplification, the larger the shaking amplification is going to be at that site. So very, very soft material, very weak, deep sediments tend to be the stronger shaking. That doesn't mean you cannot build appropriately for that type of sediment, but you need to be anchored into that sediment and you need to have a structure that will withstand the level of shaking. We have many structures, I'd say, in California that can handle any level of shaking. It's really a matter of resources and not engineering. I think we can build buildings that will never collapse if you want to put the resources into that structure. So it's a cost-benefit issue. But you can build on soil and get a very good response with the right type of structure. Houses in this country do quite well even on soil. Houses have enough wood to keep a stiff response to any level of shaking. And so typically for major earthquakes in this country, there's not nearly as many casualties as there are in countries where bricks and clay and rocks and adobe are the standard.
Any other questions for David?
You showed earlier on about sort of virtual seismic sites where you modeled response based on the surface cover of California. Have you ever tested that modeling by modeling a site that actually has a seismic reactor?
The scenario earthquakes, for example?
No, where you contour things based on these virtual.
Well, yeah, in fact, that's something that we're working on right now. The question is, how accurate are the shake maps? And one way you can tell that is to take a shake map where you have a lot of stations, and you drop the station out, and then you say, let's make a shake map. And you say, what was the value at that place where we recorded it? And that gives you an estimate of your error or uncertainty at that particular location. And if you do a loop over all the stations, you get a map that shows how well you would have predicted things if you didn't have particular sites in there. And we're doing that in order to make an automatic map that shows uncertainties for these maps, because they're used for very critical response systems now. And people really want to know the uncertainty. So that's an ongoing research effort.
Have these maps found any use in the insurance and property valuation real estate industry, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's an important piece, and yes, the answer is definitely yes. It's a very important thing to know if you have a huge exposure, what your losses are, and how to respond to those losses. A lot of the financial communities are starting to see this as a benefit for responding. And I think for the most part it's been very positive because people are concerned about the risk now. They understand the risk once they can see the distribution of shaking. So I think it's pretty encouraging that it's used by people who have huge portfolios to understand what they face.
Would we be able to know if an earthquake, like the chapter, went through the crust?
I'm not sure I heard the question.
If the chapter of like the earthquake went through the crust, will we be able to know?
Yeah, I think you can. You can tell where the energy came from an earthquake. You can track it down by how much time it takes to get to you from the earthquake. You pretty much know what part of the crust it came through. So I think the answer is yes to that. Sometimes we see energy bouncing off the bottom of the crust, coming back up to the surface, and sometimes it's even stronger when it does that fast thing into the straight.
Are there any consumer-level seismographs that you can take data from? I understand that there are hobby seismographs that are the high-Q, low-cost versions, and there are things like calculator and computer-based laboratories that might be able to provide information from sensors.
I think I can imagine that in the future we will have a very, very dense network that's perhaps PC-based. Every PC could have this. But it adds a lot of complexity to somebody who's trying to archive and collect data, because these things get turn off and turn on, and your network is always changing. And like I said, when you run a seismic network, the cost isn't the instrument, it's really operating the network. So there's a trade-off between having a lot of a high density of instruments out there and actually be able to use that information in a systematic way. And that's going to be the challenge.
You got 15 or 16,000 responses from a sparsely populated area. How many people live in this area?
Which one about that?
The one north of LA.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The one that was 6.5 in San Simeon, if you were to dissect those responses, you'd see that most of the 17,000 came from suburbs of San Francisco and suburbs of Los Angeles, and that there were only several hundred in the area that was shaken apart. So again, there's where the earthquake happens is going to really dictate how many responses come. If that was a little bit smaller and wasn't felt in LA, the numbers would have gone down dramatically.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Pike, David, please. I'm sorry. One more question.
It isn't really a question. It's just that a young person asked a question about quakes on other planetary bodies, and I'd like to acknowledge that Yoshio Nakamura, who is the world's expert on moonquakes, is in our audience tonight.
Yoshio.